Hi guys, Bada Bing here. Thanks for tuning in. We are back with the WE Apache A3 MP5. And today we're going to be looking at the anti-freeze cylinder and high flow valve upgrade kit from AMG. On my previous video on the A+ Airsoft ramjet valve for the WE MP5, AMG commented on my video with a link to their high flow valve, saying, maybe you can try this. AMG have made quite a name for themselves in the gas blowback upgrades, and I've also seen many videos on their YouTube channel showing the increased performance on various gas pistols and rifles, so they had my attention, and of course being the cheeky fellow that I am, I responded to them by requesting a sample. To my surprise, they accepted. Wow. Thanks AMG for the opportunity. Are they sure they know what they're doing? They not only sent me their high flow valve, but also the antifreeze cylinder bulb. Along with these items, they gave me a brief description of their development of these products. In their words, we've extensively tested the stock guns to find the minimum required gas output for an effective operation, and set up our bulb to provide the best output balance, so as to reach gas efficiency and reduce magazine cooldown effect. Furthermore, they indicated that the best and most efficient results depends entirely on many factors, such as the nozzle of the gas can, pressure exerted when filling, the time spent filling, and, most importantly, temperature. Hearing the stages of development from the manufacturer really does open up your mind to the level of commitment that goes into designing these upgrades for each specific airsoft gun. I always thought that they just made the holes bigger in the valves to let more gas in, and voila! But it's so much more to it than that. So here we are, the upgrade kit. AMG have a cool design for their packaging, with a handy QR code on the back, so when you use your smartphone it'll take you directly to their Facebook page. The cylinder and valve are all really well engineered and the finishing is lovely, even though they'll be hidden away from the world when installed, but nonetheless, lovely finishing either way. Installing the high flow valve is as easy as replacing a light bulb really, just make sure you have a valve key. They've chosen to go with the springless design, which will help make it more efficient in its activation and eliminating the resistance from the spring. The antifreeze cylinder required some light modifications to fit, not of the cylinder itself, but the nozzle. As the MP5 is the European version, with a lower FPS, it features longer prongs on the nozzle base, so when I installed their new bulb, the gas would just flow directly behind it and not into it, as the longer prongs would seat the bulb farther forward within the nozzle, and the flow of gas just couldn't pass into it. This resulted in an FPS of 150 to 200, When I explained to AMG what was going on, and if I was required to trim off those longer prongs, they confirmed that this was the case, but not too much. Once I had taken off 3mm or so off the tips, it was firing at a more comfortable 310 to 320 FPS with .2s. Perfect. I should also mention that the FPS is at a stable and perfect CQB setting. I'm using a shorter Maple Leaf 6.01 Crazy Jet in a barrel, which is half the length of the original A3 in a barrel. For a single magazine worth of BBs, AMG recommends 10 to 15 grams of gas for efficient and consistent results. On my propane adapter nozzle, that's about 7 to 9 seconds. When requiring up to 2 mag dumps, they've recommended 20 to 25 grams. That translates to roughly 16 or 17 seconds when filling. Now that the MP5 has these lovely upgrades, we can now compare them to the stock WE parts and see how well it performs. First up, the round count per gas fill. For this round of testing, I decided to fill the magazines to its higher capacity of 25 grams, measuring the weight completely empty and after filling with propane. Using all the original WE parts, the MP5 fired 188 shots, so this was the benchmark. Using the WE original rocket valve and the AMG high flow valve, it fired 139 shots in total. So the stock setup fired a whole magazine more than the AMG upgraded valve. But then AMG upgrades provides a higher gas flow, so this isn't really much of a surprise. I installed the AMG cylinder bulb and tried out a stock WE magazine. This was able to cap off 168 BBs before the tank was dry. so not as low miles per gallon as the AMG, but still not quite as high with the complete stock internals. Although we may see a difference reflect when it comes down to the chrono. Lastly, we try out the whole AMG kit, 144 shots total, 5 shots better than with the original WE cylinder, so while it is a mediocre improvement, it's still proof of the effectiveness of it being used together. Of course, the WE valve with the AMG cylinder was able to put in a little more overtime, but remember, the flow is low. Next we move on to the chronograph, and at the beginning of the long, painful journey of trying to set a series of records with this X-Core-Tech chrono. Anything but a true straight shot is going to cause an error. For each test, 15 grams of gas is loaded into either magazine for best results. G&G Perfect 2s were used for the following tests. We're back to the all-original MP5, and here are the scores. The first BB came out at 318.4, and the final 45th having a speed of 273 dead. Overall, from BB1 to 45, it dropped 45.4 FPS. The second round with the AMG high flow valve upgraded magazine, and we kick off with this scoreboard at 320.4 FPS, and finishing at 278.6, losing 41.8 FPS overall. Now to round 3, with the AMG cylinder installed, and the original WE magazine. It started off with a low FPS of 296.8, and ended at 256.8, but throughout the 45 rounds it only lost 40 FPS. The final round of chrono readings with the full AMG kit, it starts off at 322.7, and the 45th round at 268.3, the highest loss of FPS from start to finish out of all the other configurations, at 54.4 FPS. We now know that it burns a candle at both ends, so this must translate to a higher rate of fire. After all, it is one of the complaints by some regarding its slower cyclic rate, and something I've always wanted to try and bump up. I know that Angry Gun has a speed buffer, specifically for the fixed stock A2 version, but there isn't anything available for the A3 stocked or the Kurtz variants. With the last rounds of tests, I wanted to see what the practical performance of these upgrades produced. I filled the magazines with 20 grams of propane and see how it does. The standard rate of fire is roughly 14 BBs per second, or 840 rounds a minute. Not a bad figure really, but there is a bit of cooldown towards the last 10 to 15 BBs. During the warmer months of the year, or hot climates in general, not so much. But for me, now, as winter begins to draw in, it's a factor to be taken into account. Here we have the AMG upgraded MP5. Do you guys notice a difference? It may or may not seem like it on film, but in person, the grip of the MP5 has a tauter jolt of energy running through it than before. Standard, it has a sort of rhythmic motion, but here it certainly feels different. On the clock, the AMG high flow valve is able to shoot 15.08 BBs per second, breaking the barrier of 900 rounds a minute. So 15 BBs per second. Wow, a whole one shot more than standard. I was getting a bit of residual spray from the MP5 as it rattled off those rounds. Perhaps I allowed too much gas into the magazines, which would explain the higher level of gas discharge from the ejection port, but any less and it would have had a tougher time completing the 45 rounds on one trigger pull. Despite its increased ROF at the beginning through to the middle of the magazine, it experiences the same cooldown as the stock MP5 valve, although it's only really noticeable within the final 10 shots, so it definitely empties it quicker than the original. So, stock decided to come loose. Wow. Was very quick. Very quick indeed. As it is a gas blowback subgun, with its limited capacity, you may not use the fun switch. Gas blowback gamers seldom use fully auto anyway, only on special occasions like plinking, showing off at the end of a game, birthdays, weddings and stuff, so using semi-auto with this upgrade kit will improve the snap. The original isn't exactly sluggish by no means, but it has been improved with the high flow valve. The bolt reciprocation is just a touch faster, so blazing away indoors room to room, it'll sound great. Coming back to automatic, I wanted to see how it would deal with a fresh load of propane, but on a cold mag. The results were predictable, but I wanted to try it out nonetheless. Excuse me. That propane really gets into the back of your throat. In conclusion, AMG's upgrades work. While not as much as they do on other platforms, I have seen them make a real difference to stock gas blowback models. For example, their version for the VFC HK45 Compact Tactical is such an amazing improvement. Despite such a high price tag, performance out of the box was very meh. It was only when AMG introduced their magic when it truly shined. Once I saw their YouTube video, I kinda wanted one again. But since the WE MP5 from the factory is pretty damn good anyway, it's a little trickier for the performance to be dramatically increased. I felt that they've done the best they could without overflowing the system and lead to extreme cooldown. Should you buy it? Well, if you're living in colder climates or running the Apache during the winter, it may not be worth investing in. Fully auto and burst fire would be out of the question, and the snappiness of semi-auto won't be much of an improvement over standard if it's 10 degrees C or lower. Also depends on what gas you're using, I guess. If it's Garda black gas or MAP gas, then maybe. Unfortunately, I don't have any to hand, otherwise I would have tried it out. Then there's HPA, if that's your thing. If you're someone that lives somewhere warm or hot and would love to have an increased rate of fire, hell yes, go for it. Cooldown won't be much of an issue, and at the very least it'll match those dudes running around with G5s and MP7s. A massive thank you to AMG for providing the anti-freeze cylinder and high flow valve for this video. It's not every day manufacturers send me things, and more to the point, they were right in advising me to check out their product. Unlike the A+ Airsoft ramjet valve, theirs, AMG's, actually worked and earned the designation of upgrade part. It isn't a facade or a money for nothing expense, so thank you guys. If you'd like to check out their product catalogue, I have links in the description to their Facebook page and a handful of retailers that stock their parts. I hope you found this video interesting. If you did, why not hit that like, and if you haven't already, subscribe so you can keep up to date with my latest videos. Any questions or comments, leave them down below, or you can hit me up with a message on Facebook at facebook.com/badabingpictures. I'm also on Instagram at badabingpictures, so you can follow me on there if you'd like. So until next time, take care of yourselves, my friends, and I'll catch you in a bit.